In order to build socialism, and later on communism, you need material security. But what you need most is to develop a communist consciousness. If we don't study politics, Marx and Lenin, how can we raise people's political consciousness? Building socialism and communism would be impossible. So one of the important functions of the party in the factory is to organize political study classes for workers and cadres. One might think that this would slow down production, but in fact, it increases it. The study of Marxism and Leninism and the understanding of materialism enables the workers to put their ideas into practice. We don't have to rely on money or threats to motivate the workers. We count on Marxism-Leninism. That's the difference between capitalist factories and ours. It increases production rather than slowing it down. I'd like to understand why you study 19th century philosophy. You mean the study of Engels' Anti-Düring. The Anti-Düring is one of the most important classical works of Marxism-Leninism. Although it was written in relation to a particular struggle between Marxism and opportunism in the 19th century, it's still valid. We study the Anti-Düring today to help us understand the meaning of materialism and of idealism. An impulsive reaction is very similar to a false intuitive thought. What is an impulsive reaction? What does intuitive thought mean? In the third chapter, Engels concentrated on denouncing and condemning Düring's apriorism. Düring taught and defended apriorism, claiming that principles exist prior to objects. Düring maintains that thought is a framework. According to him, the unity of one's thought creates the unity of being. For Düring, the relationship is that the unity of thought comes first, and that of being comes after. Let's say I want to go somewhere. I have to take a certain route, but I have a false intuition. I go in the opposite direction. I never arrive. We always act according to our thoughts. That's how I see it. If not, we'd be acting blindly. How can that be denied? What commands action, if not thought? First we have a concept in our head, then we act. You're wrong. If the concept comes first, that means thought. Matter exists objectively. It doesn't depend on man's will. It can never be created by will alone. Lao Li just said that he wanted to go east, but he went west because of a false intuitive thought. That's why he was wrong. And yet both east and west exist objectively. The problem is knowing if there are intuitive thoughts, not whether they are right or wrong. From a materialist point of view, we must not overemphasize intuitive thoughts. These thoughts may seem to jump to mind in a matter of seconds, as part of a process. But in reality, they are necessary conclusions. They are determined after long periods of practical experience, or after careful reflection. They are founded objectively, after a long accumulation. Form and reality always have foundations. That's the first point. The second is, as impostors like Liu Shaoxi claimed, that thought explains everything, that everything is decided and created by thought. They fell completely into idealistic apriorism. Let's take an example, the recent problem we had with the double cooling turbo generator. There were two different points of view. Take it apart and start all over again, which would have kept us from finishing on time, or not take it apart and install an insulator. Taking it apart would have kept us from getting the job done, but installing an insulator was just what we needed. That proves that this intuitive thought was correct. But where does this thought come from? Where did it come from when the decision was made? Was it innate? Or did it spring right out of practical experience, from acquired knowledge? The question is, where did this thought come from? It's the result of accumulated experience. So it didn't just drop out of the sky. But intuitive thoughts do exist. If Lao Yu told us, take the rotor apart, wouldn't that be a sudden intuitive thought? Take it apart? If he told us to do it, we would. Because Lao Yu acts on the basis of his own experience. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. That idea should be criticized. A sudden intuitive thought, in my opinion, is actually a concept. The question is, where does this concept come from? If we just take things literally, we can accept the concept of wrong or right intuitive thoughts.
First they study in small groups. Then all the groups meet together in a general assembly to present and discuss their work. These workers come from families that were illiterate just 30 years ago. Today they have begun to reflect on philosophical issues which are considered too important to be left in the hands of a few specialists. Mao Zedong says, philosophy must liberate itself from the lecture halls. It must enter into each person's life.